Good morning, everyone. Can I get a thumbs up that y'all can hear me? Perfect. What I would like to do right here at the beginning is to give you a small warm-up exercise. So let me do that. I'm going to share my screen. I'd like you to be able to write these numbers down. So whether you have your Thani open, open up your Thani. That would make the most sense. So I'm going to type in Thani myself, file, new, and I'm going to call this what? Some numbers, sure. File, save as, and I'm going to make, because we're at module 6 now, so I'm making a new folder called module 6, and I'm going to save this program called sum numbers v1. Okay? So what I would like you to do is write a program, and we're going to go to breakout rooms, so please don't start coding this yet. Write a program that will sum 3 sets of numbers and then display the sum of each. Okay, so I'm going to copy all of that. Write a program that will display 3 sets of numbers, that will sum 3 sets of numbers, and then display the sum of each. Okay, so write that down. You don't need to write down the whole sentence, but write down this: the sum of integers 1 through 10, the sum of integers from 20 to 37, and the sum of integers from 35 to 49. So literally, it should look like this. The sum from 1 to 10 is 55. So output should be the sum of, how about the sum from 1 to 10 is 55, period. The sum from 20 to 37 is, and what is that, 513. The sum from 35 to 49 is 630. And as I mentioned, we're starting module 6, which is functions today. Some of you have studied methods or functions. Others have not. I don't want you using methods or functions for this. Again, this is not the time to flex, just stretching exercise, basic loop. As you see here in PowerPoint, the program, it's just, you have a variable sum. You're going to do a loop. You choose which loop you think is most appropriate, a while loop or a for loop. You add those numbers into sum, iteratively, one at a time throughout that loop, and then you simply print the final sum. So what I'm going to do, hopefully I've written that down. I'm going to go ahead and break us up into our groups. This should take no more than maybe 4 to 5 minutes, maybe even only 3 minutes. But let's see, I'll break you into groups, then I'll come see you. Let me check out the groups real quick. And here we go. So for the sake of the video, some of you are hearing this, but while y'all are joining the rooms, I'm going to go ahead and code up just a little solution of this. And that would be what? So I'm waiting. Farha, you've not joined. Farha, make sure you join breakout room 3. Okay. So we have what? I need to do a for loop, and sum equals 0. And I'm going to say for I in range. And notice it was 1, 10, right? But if I did 1, 10, remember it would only go from 1 through 9. So therefore I'm going to say 1, and you know what? I'll even code it this way, just so you can see the 10, and then I'll put plus 1. It doesn't matter. That's just so you can see that the 10 is there. What that, if I had said 1, 11, y'all should have recognized that's really 1, 10, but I can do this, 1, 10 plus 1, right? If I wanted to. And then here I'm simply going to add that value I to our current sum, okay? And then at the end, I'm going to print. So how about I just actually give my values? I'll call it num1 equals 1, num2 equals 10, and then I'll put the sum afterwards. Overkill maybe. sum equals 0. So let's do it this way. It's even better. So num1, num2 plus 1, and then afterwards we're going to print. I'll put it right after the for loop. No, I'll put it here. Print the sum from bracket to bracket is bracket. Okay? And period, dot format, num1, num2, sum. Make sure this works as expected. Sum from 1 to 10 is 55. Cool. So we're going to copy paste that. Okay. Copy paste all of this right here and do it twice more. Done. And here's the first one. The second one is 20 to 37. So 20 to 37. And then this third one is 35 to 49. 35 to 49. And we get our expected outputs. So let's go check y'all out in your rooms. Join breakout room 1. Nicely done. That seemed pretty quick.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's on the same page, that everyone's in agreement and understands. I'm going to go check out the other room.
All right.
So now we're just printing the output. So I'm gonna just actually copy that line.
Y'all are clearly on the right track. So we'll be going back to the main room in about 60 seconds.
Okay.
I would use Y for the second one instead of X. You have to put it in the for loop too.
What?
And I don't think you have to initialize X on line 8.
Don't you? Because if you don't, then it's gonna. Yeah.
And then on line 9, it should be printing Y instead of X. And I think the sum should still equal 0 when you're initializing it on line 7.
No, because if you start at 0, then it's gonna.
It'll add 20, and then it'll add 21, and then it'll add 22, and so on until.
I like the group effort and observation. So I like how one of you is coding, the other one, because I promise you, when I code this up, even quickly, I make a mistake. So it's very common, even if it's typos. So I like how one of y'all's coding, the other one's making observations as you go. Were y'all just printing the value inside X, Y, or Z just so you could see it?
Didn't it say to display the number that you're printing?
I don't think so, but it may have, in which case that's a typo that I need to fix, but no issue.
Okay.
Put your plus Z there.
Oh, thank you.
So when you run that, it's gonna have a lot of numbers here.
What did you want to call it? I'll just call it.
This is for you. What do you want to call it?
I don't know.
Call it sum something, not just sums. I think sum is maybe some numbers. There you go.
Oh, hold on, let me just take these out.
Was it 34 to 50? 35
It was 35
to 49.
45 to 49.
And that makes
right.
sense because the answer was 630. No,
No,
leave
keep
the
it
50 there. Just make it 35.
Oh,
Yep.
okay, I got it. I had it backwards.
So you did it correct.
This one's wrong too then.
20 to 38 because it was 37, so it should be 38.
And this one should be 10.
It needs to be one bigger than the number you're going to. So the range on the second one should be 20, 37. The range on the first one should be 1, 11. Because remember,
it should be 38.
It should be 38 because it's going to stop at 37 if you put 38.
Okay.
So that is correct. At this point, I told the other group that I'm going to give them 60 more seconds, so they should be good as well. So I'm going to go bring everyone back to the main room.
Oh wait, should we do the formatted printing?
Nah, I mean you'll have a few more seconds if you like, but no need.
You're muted.
Every time. How long will I do this? Or I'm going to keep muting myself when I come back. It's hilarious. So look, that was a very easy exercise, a stretching exercise, in part to wake us up, stretch before actually, doing the real exercise. But more than that, it's also related to what we're covering today. So you should have had something like this, where notice I went ahead and saved each number. So num1, I set to 1, num2, I set to 10, and then I initialized my sum to 0. For I in range, I loop from num1 to num2, and notice I do num2 plus 1. Can someone tell me why I did that?
To loop inclusively. You want to include both ends.
Yeah, so remember when for I in range loop, if we put two values inside, so here's the first value, then we have a comma, and here's the second value. The values it loops over, the range of values, it includes this first value, but it's not inclusive of this entire number here. So if num2 was 10, 10 plus 1 is 11. It's not inclusive of that number 11. It actually loops up until the number before 11, which in this case is 10. So I just did it this way so you can visualize what you need to do. So it's num1 up to num2 plus 1, which is going to be what we need. And I'm simply going to add my I to the sum. Then I use formatted printing to print my result. And once that I confirmed that that was correct, which you can see it is here. So that's what I did. I confirmed it was correct. I then did what? I simply copy pasted all of that twice more, and I simply changed num1 and num2. And then I changed again num1 and num2. So I do this example, as I mentioned, in part because it's a stretching exercise to warm up our minds since the weekend. And also, though, as it relates to functions. Because here, and this is the motivation for functions, when you see in your code that you're doing something, repeating the same, repeating the same subset of code. So here we have some code. Then I have effectively identical code. And that's why I coded it up that way. So it looks the same. The only difference is this 20 versus 37. Everything else is the same. And here, everything else is the same. You see that we did those three things all identical. That should make you think, wouldn't it be better if we had a way to just have something that will do that, like we code it once. So instead of having three sets of code like you see here, wouldn't it be nice if we could just code that up one time and then we use that thing that we coded to help us calculate our sums? This is the motivation. So here, when I show you the slides, this is the PDF that's available online. So when I come to the solution that you see in the PDF, this is what I wrote here. It's pretty much the same thing, but I didn't use formatted printing, so this is horrible. I should change this. And so that works, but the problem is what? That we have the same three sets of code that are effectively repeated, but with different numbers. So again, this is the motivation for functions. So each sum is doing the same thing, but just a different range of numbers. So we're repeating that code 3 times. So the idea of functions is, if you're repeating code over and over, well, instead of repeating that code, write a common set of code and a more general set of code, and then reuse that code again and again whenever you need it. This is the idea of functions, okay? So here, I'm not going to explain this fully right now. In fact, let me just come here, let me hit escape. Let's come to Thani, and let's see how we can do this exact same thing using functions. So I'm going to hit File, Save As, and I called mine Sum Number version 1. I'm going to call it now version 2, okay? That's why I did that. So Sum Number version 2 and save. So I still have all of this same code, okay? So this time we're going to do this with functions. And I'm not going to explain this fully here. This is just the trailer like the trailer of the movie. This is the trailer, the preview of what we're going to cover with functions. So I'm not going to explain this completely. This is just a holistic view of how functions work. And then we're going to dive into the details and look at the anatomy of our functions. But for now, just watch me. I want to define a function. And so here, define a function, okay, that sums numbers between num1 and num2 inclusive. This function should then, let me just even print the sum for now. This function should simply print the sum of those numbers. Okay, so here we go. Def stands for define, and I'm going to call it some numbers. Some numbers. How about I call it? Yeah, some numbers print. You'll see why I'm doing that. So define this function called some numbers print. This function, notice I'll type it, then I'll explain just a little bit. And again, I'm not going to explain this fully. As I said, this is just a bird's eye view, like a trailer, if you will, of functions. So here, let me see, and I'm going to do a for I in range. And really, I can just copy this. And then I'll tab this over, and I need to put in here a sum equals 0. And then I'm just going to print afterwards. Print is I'm going to do this period dot format sum. Okay, so let me show you what I'm going to do here. Let me erase all of this. So I've defined this function, and again, I'll explain it in just a few minutes. So I've defined this function. Let me explain it now. Again, this is just a overview, okay, bird's eye explanation, not detail. So the name of this function is called sum numbers print. And first of all, look at my program. I have nothing else from lines 1 through 20. I have no other lines of code. All lines of code are within this function, okay? So now if I type just print hello or hello world, right? If I type this and then I run my program, the only thing that's going to run is that statement hello world. Because a function, this here is.
There we go.
I
You're muted.
just said, wow, I've never seen that happen. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. Did that happen to any of y'all? Or did your screen show anything? Anyway, my screen just showed Zoom as if it's connecting. And it seemed like my internet was having a problem. So I had to very quickly, I couldn't go to a website. I messaged you on Slack, so you'll probably see a message on Slack. Yeah, it didn't crash. The internet went out. Actually, Slack says I could not even send the message. Here, I'm gonna hit try again. Anyway, so it's interesting. Technology, it's great when it works. So let's go back to where we were. Share screen. Where were we? So here, when I run this code, okay, I only get hello world. So a function, put it this way, let me explain it differently. Have y'all seen any functions until now? What are some functions that we have seen within Python? Take a guess. I'm telling you, I'll tell you, you've seen many.
Print?
Musab, perfect. Someone else, give me another one.
Any of the various math functions?
Any of the math functions. Let me even put it this way, and again, I'll explain this more in detail. Here, let me put this, let me open file. I'm doing multiple things here. File, new, save. I'll call this module 6 notes. So we've seen many functions until now. In fact, the sign of a function is parentheses. So anytime you see parentheses, you should think function. Examples, print, because you have parentheses afterwards. That is a print function. It's printing something to your screen. Give me another function. You said min, okay? Max, and I'm putting parentheses here. You put stuff in those parentheses. What's another one we've looked at? Give me something else we've seen with parentheses. Quick, anyone?
Random.
Yep, no, not random, but what was it specifically? Within
Rand
random.
dot random.
Well, so the function itself was randint, okay? We've seen many functions. So my point of showing you this, those are functions that are built into Python, okay? They're built into the language. And those functions, so there's coding for those functions. Like min, I don't want to use the word magic, but min does not work by magic. You know, when you put randint, 1 comma 100, how's that working? There's code underneath the hood that is making that work, okay? That returns a random number for you. There's code that Python developed that will create for you this random number. So even though you don't see the code, this is a function, and we're sending to this function these two numbers, 1 and 100, okay? And then Python runs some code that is inside that function that will generate a pseudo-random number between 1 and 100, and then it returns that number to us. So that code and that function has been already created by Python. My point is what? Knowing that all those functions exist, when I run this code right here, look at my screen, when I run this code, why am I not seeing a random number? It might seem like a silly question, but there's a random function. So why am I not seeing a random number right here? Again, maybe it's a silly question. My only line of code is line 17. Why am I not seeing a random number knowing that that random function exists?
Because you didn't call that random function.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Y'all should be wondering, that's a weird question. I'm not calling the random function, so why would I see a random number, right? I mean, if I were to have printed random dot rand int 1 comma 100, right? And if I had imported random, now I'm going to see a random number between 1 and 100, 60. Run it again, I see 77, right? So if I ask you, why am I not, on this program, as you see right now, why am I not seeing a random number when I run it? The correct answer is because, dude, you didn't actually ask for a random number. You didn't call the random number function. Maybe that's an overkill of an explanation, but getting back to where we were here, I said, when I run this code right now, I've created this function, some numbers print. But when I run this code, I only get hello world. And the answer, or the question is, why am I only getting hello world? Why am I not seeing the sum of numbers and getting the sum? Well, the answer is the same. Because although we created this general or this generic function, we've not actually called it. And you might say, well, how do we call it? Well, how are we calling the print function? We're typing print in parentheses. How are we calling the randint function? We're typing randint in parentheses. How do we call the min function? We're typing min in parentheses. So how do we call this function up here? I would have typed its name, and I would have put parentheses, and then inside that parentheses, I would have put whatever I needed to send to that function. Okay, so now I'll give you a little bit more. This is still a high-level bird's eye view explanation, but if you look, when we define this function here, I'm sending over, or it's expecting, this function is expecting to receive two numbers, and they're both inside the parentheses, and I've called them num1 and num2. The function is expecting to receive two numbers. So if I just type over here, 1 comma 10, what I'm doing is, what actually happens is this number 1, let me actually put num1 comma 11. This number 1 is going to end up flying over, if you will, and landing right into that spot, and that becomes 1. And this 11, when I call the function, it's going to fly over, and it's going to land into that spot of num2, and it's going to be right there. And then all of this code should make sense to you because that's the exact same code that we had up already. Let me open that back up. That is the exact same code that we already did, right? So here, y'all can see my code, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So when I come back to this one, 1 is going to come to right here, 11 is going to come to right here, and then so let me put this back as num1 and num2. And when I run this, we get 66, and I put a period after the 66. Okay, maybe kind of weird, but I wanted the exact same output. So let me even do this again. Ooh, no, I don't want to send 11. I'm actually just sending 10. So from 1 to 10 is 55. So let me actually even, let me say num1 is, I'll just do this, a equals n1 equals 1, n2 equals 10. Okay, and then I'm going to make that print statement. The print statement was this right here. So watch my code. We're printing the sum from blank to blank is, and I'm going to get rid of this part. Notice this is part, okay, where I have the sum from blank to blank is blank. Well, here I already had calculated the sum and I was printing it there. But I'm not, now within my new code, I don't have any calculation of sum right here, okay? So pretend that you don't even see this define numbers. You just know that that's a function that's good. That's, imagine it's built in. So we don't currently see that anywhere, right? So bear with me. So here I want to get rid of this placeholder in the period, and I need to get rid of this word sum. Okay. So let me put this back. Let me actually cut this out and then delete this. So again, right now there's nothing printing with sum. I'm just saying, no, what did I put? I called it num1 and num2. This is n1 and n2. So the sum from 1 to 10 is all it prints, right? The sum from 1 to 10 is something. So now, change this back to num1, from num1 to n1 and num2 to n2. So now, after I print this statement, the sum from blank to blank is, let me run that again to show you, the sum from 1 to 10 is, notice what I do on the very next line, right here on line 23. On line 23, I'm going to paste. I put this function call, and that should not be confusing because we've called other functions. We call the print function all the time. And the print function expects at least one thing inside it, like a string, right? So here we're calling the print function. Well, here on line 23, I'm calling this function sum numbers print, and I'm sending to that function the values 1 and 10, okay? And the result is that function then it calculates this sum. All of that code you should all understand. So, and then it simply prints the resulting sum. So when I run this now, I get the, oops, someone tell me how to fix that. That's an easy fix. I want it all on one line. Where do I put, what do I put, and where do I put it?
You're going to put end equals in empty quotes, and
Tell
you're
me
going to
where.
put it in that print statement.
Which line number?
22.
Yeah, and where do I put it exactly? Where do I click?
At the very end before the final parenthesis.
Perfect, right here. Okay. So here, the sum from 1 to 10 is 55, right? So now that I have that one function that I've created, I can call it multiple times. Okay. Oops. You know what? This should be in 1. This should be in 2. Let's paste that again. And what are the other values? We had 20 and 37. So here we have 20, 37, and we have 35 to 49. Okay, so when I run this, I should get my same output that we're expecting. But now the idea is what? The workhorse, where that work is done within that function of all of these for loops, that's all offloaded to a function. So notice the difference between these three sets of code. Here, this first program, version 1, I had the sum, I did the for loop, I have my print statement. But here's really the work that's happening, okay? And I did that work again on the second example, and I did it and I coded it again on the third example. So the difference here is that actual work of initializing sum to 0, doing the for loop, calculating the sum, and then printing what that final sum was. We've offloaded that into its own function. And then on lines 23, 28, and 33, we've called that function on 3 different times. Now, just for even further clarity, and again, this is a very extended trailer. Normally I'd do this for like a 2-minute trailer. This is like an 8-minute trailer. So here, what if I delete that function and I run it right now? What would Python say to me? David?
With the code I currently see, it would do nothing. Or give an error,
Yeah,
one of the two.
It's going to give an error. It's going to say, excuse me, sir, what is sum numbers print? Because it doesn't know what sum numbers print is, right? So name sum numbers print is not defined, because I think I've defined a function, but it doesn't see it because I just deleted it, right? So here I put that function back. So just like the print or the randint or the min or max functions, this is a function, but we've created it. We've defined it. And so that's why we have to go put it within our program. So now watch this debugger. This is what's really helpful. I think this is one of the most powerful features of Thani is the debugger, especially when you get to functions. So I'm going to click. So notice the first thing is that. Let me hit stop again. So Thani, when you debug this, the first thing Thani sees is this function. And it just, notice, it almost like saves it. It says as a variable over here. It says, okay, we have this function, sum numbers print. Good to know. It just like takes note of the fact that, cool, the programmer had decided to make a function. So now we continue. That's all it does. All of that, it just said, hey, there must be a function. Now on line 20, we have a variable, n1. Line 21, we have another variable. Line 23, we have this print statement. It's going to execute that. Sorry. Allow me to hit stop. I don't want y'all to be confused by all this other red stuff here. One more time. Debug. I'll go fast. Okay. Here we're at this print statement. The sum from 1 to 10 is, and now look at line 23. Line 23, what are we doing? Here's where we're calling our function, and we're sending over the values in 1 and in 2 to our function, okay? So let's see what happens. In 1 is 1, in 2 is actually 10, and we're gonna call that function. So look at what happens with Thani when we call that function. It's very cool. Thani, what we get, look at my screen, we get a pop-up window because this is the function that's being called. This function is really outside of your main working area, okay? It's like a separate entity that's being called to do a specific job. So the way Thani represents that is by opening up its own window. So now it knows, look at the bottom, it says local variables, num1 is 1 and num2 is 10. Thani already knows that because what happened is, let me come to my annotations, is that this value 1, what did I tell you? Let me hit stop. Oh, I didn't put this over enough. No. Wrong stop button. Annotate and clear and stop. Okay. So here, what did I tell you? I said that this 1 right here, I said is going to get sent over and saved inside num1. And then this 10, when we call the function, it's going to get sent over and saved inside num2. Well, so here is, let me hit stop again. Clear annotations and stop. So here is our, okay, function, and we see num1, we see num2, and look down here, it says in fact num1 is 1 and num2 is 10. So now we can continue on with the debugger. I hit F7. We get sum is 0, that's a local variable, and then here we have to do this for loop. From looping from 1 to 11, okay? So for I in range, 1 comma 11, I starts at 1, we add 1 to our sum, and we basically keep going. So we're adding all of these values to our sum. Look at how it's changing. I is currently 8, and we add 8 on top of 28. What's 8 plus 28? It's 36. Then I becomes 9. What's 9 plus 36? It's 45. Then I becomes 10. What's 10 plus 45? It's 55. And I does not become 11 because the range was only from 1 to 11, but it does not include 11. We finally print our sum, and we're going to print the value 55 with a period afterwards. And notice in the output, that's what gets printed. So then you come to, and then that function goes away. So now we come to line 25, N1 is 20, N2 is 37. The sum from 20 to 37 is, and we call our function again. But now the value of N1 is 20 and N2 is 37. So we get a new pop-up window. And here we're again calling this function. So notice at the bottom, local variables, num1 is 20, num2 is 37, and we would loop through this exact same thing. How quickly does it do this? Yeah, so I'm going to step over or step out. There we go. That function's done. And then I would have called the next one. And some numbers from 35 to 49. We again call this, and we again loop over. This is the idea. So we're out of time for this session. I'm going to start a new session, and we'll continue.